Hi, welcome to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
Yeah, I usually see myself speaking but for some reason I'm only in a little box with you. But that's okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we should just pick up. We kind of ended.
Yeah,
Thought there was more time, and I said, Robert, get off.
Yeah. So anyway, the situation, there was a call for doing some more inputs and changes to the proposed changes for Barron Plaza. And I think the city's perfectly amenable to, if there's any good ideas and suggestions, that they're, keep them coming. I don't think any is going to be thoroughly locked in. But the sort of the overall architecture of the space, I think, is.
It's hostile architecture. That was the overall theme.
Well, I gotta say about that is that there's people are using that term hostile architecture now because it's kind of trendy.
Yeah.
There is nothing about what is being proposed for Barron Plaza in the future that can, in any reasonable sense, be called hostile architecture.
Well, if you can't sit wherever you want, and it's uncomfortable, or it's movable, or I guess it's hostile to them. I don't know.
Well, there is plenty of seating, but
not all the time.
I was trying to figure out, like, well, what are they talking about? And it may well be that the granite edges of the planters that were put in there in the mid-1990s versions of the improvements to Barron Plaza, that is, I guess, de facto seating area, and so that'll be somewhat reconfigured. But it's not like there'll be no place to sit. It's just it'll be different.
And also they wanted to. The plans are to have more public events there. Well, if you have that, you have to have movable seating. You have to have some kind of flexibility. And I'm not going to go to an event there if things are the way they are. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't feel comfortable.
It's a difficult thing to talk about. It's sort of like whenever people talk about.
I'm glad I'm not running for a seat, because you can't. I mean,
right.
But it's sort of like Melnia, Mass and Cass.
Exactly. So for Mass and Cass, they end up punting everything down the road.
Not today. The latest is.
I know they're banning tents, doing a lot of other things.
Yeah, but now the pushback is amazing. You can't do this to people. Well, I'm sorry, they're shooting up and it's endangering people. I think you can.
I mean, I've heard some. Listen, I know of some. I mean, if people are trying to make it out as though somehow the substance abuser community is like a real community in Central Square, and they need to be protected because they're just like everybody else. They're sort of neglecting the fact, for example, that one of them died in the not too distant past, and they threw his body in a dumpster.
Wait,
so I'm kind of lacking in sympathy for
this is
the community
documented?
that would do that to one of their own.
Is this documented?
Yeah. So, so to me, if the political people want to sort of dance around the edges of a problem like this because they don't want to be seen as lacking in compassion.
I'm sorry.
Put the word compassion in literature.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crap. I mean, that's just pure crap.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a problem that needs to be addressed, just like they're addressing it in Boston. And that doesn't mean doing it in a nasty sort of way. It means providing a lot of what people need for those who are willing to accept the help. Do what you can.
And then you can't just hang out in a place all day. I mean, maybe, I mean, we have to have alternatives, but you have to have, I don't know, other people have rights too. I don't know.
The word intolerance is generally viewed in a negative way.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that simply shouldn't be tolerated.
That's right.
I've been having a running problem here with, I actually contacted the community development department through the only means officially that they allow.
About the whole bus.
Asking that the Transit Advisory Committee, as well as the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, issue a policy statement saying that bus shelters should be for the primary use of bus patrons. And the reason for this is that the bus shelter in Central Square near Pearl Street is pretty much occupied fully all day long by people who are not bus patrons, who are openly abusing alcohol and worse, who are getting into fights, who are intimidating bus passengers. And at almost any hour of the day, you will find the bus passengers waiting up the street because they will go nowhere near the bus shelter.
Yeah, I would do that.
Now, to me, this is just common sense
Yeah.
that there ought to be a policy that states this is primarily for bus patrons, and if you're not a bus patron, you're okay to sit there temporarily. But
Yeah, but who's going to enforce that? Even if you had that as a policy, who's going to enforce it?
The problem is that the police are hesitant to enforce some of these things because they are concerned that somebody will come around and they will try and say, look at the big bad Cambridge police.
They'll take a video. I mean, not that,
Exactly. So somebody will come around with a video camera and sort of basically try and paint them with an incredibly wrong brush, and so so as far as I'm concerned, the city, I figured, well, let's start, at the base level with some of these boards and commissions that are supposedly have a job to sort of address some of these things.
Well, what if that ballot
right now is I don't know that the official gatekeepers at the community development department are even communicating my concerns to the ones as I asked them to, and they provide no way to contact any of these boards and commissions directly themselves, except through city staff. And if city staff are stonewalling me or any other resident citizen, from basically trying to
but
get
Robert, those meetings are open when they have them, just like the recycling advisory committee. Public can go, so you could actually zoom in on it and then find out who's the chair.
I know who the chair is, but I don't know that. I don't believe that's really the right way to be doing things.
I agree, but I'm just saying they are known.
And if there is a chair, then that chair has to have the responsibility of having contact information so that somebody can go directly through in an official sort of way.
Well, but
there are some of these committees, and I'm served on one of them, such as the advisory committee, that are staffed within the community development department are incredibly insular. They are not really open, to the public. You can come in and you can chime in, but try to get something on the agenda. Forget about it.
Well, then you sound like you're all for maybe shaking up the members of these. Although I don't think that's the issue, is the members. I think it's more the structure.
I think we can do a better job at having city boards and commissions function better. I've always felt that way, and I'm not doing it to denigrate them. I'm just saying is that I have some suggestions on how we can do things better and have them be more responsive. And I've certainly tried to do that even with the Central Square Advisory Committee, to have them be responsive. But somebody has to set the agendas. And my feeling about public meetings, any kind of public meeting, is just like the mayor will tell somebody who wants to speak at public comment, says, "I'm sorry, you can't speak to that. It's not on the agenda," right? At public comment, you're supposed to address matters on the agenda, And,
well, the problem is that you're not getting a response. Like if people have an issue with recycling, they're going to go to the recycling department, and they are responsive to citizens. So, transit and pedestrian, who is their direct? Who is the staff person responsible? Traffic and parking? No. Why is it community development? Isn't it traffic and parking?
It's just how it's structured.
So somebody's not.
So, but instead, what we do is we get ballot questions that basically say, the number one ballot question. You might as well speak to this here right now.
Yes, because it's related, sort of. Yeah.
So, so we have 3 ballot questions coming up.
First time, right? Well, no, you said that a while ago.
Well, I mean, there have been questions put on the ballot 5 times since 1941, challenging having the planning charter completely.
5 times.
Yeah, 5 times basically, or to at least get rid of proportional representation.
Oh,
right? And they were defeated all 5 times. So it's not like somebody hasn't tried to do a change.
It probably will happen again then. That sounds, because that's where it seemed to be where we're going.
Right, but we have basically pandemic rules now where city councilors, without any real proper public process, pretty much they just polled some city council, say, well, what do you want to change? And then next thing you know, it turns into a vote to put it to the voters. You can choose to go along with these the sort of the topics that a few city councilors basically wanted to change. No real public process. The first question of which, and by the way, let me if I haven't made it clear to people already, the arguments in favor of this that appeared in the citywide mailing, that went out. It finally, it took a while to get out.
I know.
Out to voters now. were written by Patty Nolan and Sumbul Siddiqui. And they needed somebody to write the arguments against, and I was asked to do that. So I'm the one who wrote the arguments against. Now, I don't have particularly strong feelings about the latter two ballot questions.
As you said, they could always have done that.
Yeah, they really, that's you know, they're superfluous. I mean,
Just try to have
annual,
official.
an annual performance review of the city manager. They could have asked for that or insisted upon that since 1941 if they wanted to. You know, no need to change the charter to make that so. And the other one basically calling for a charter review at least every 10 years. Well, I mean, they obviously could have done that as well.
I know, but I could sort of see that. No, but I think it to have it part of it means you have to do it.
Right.
Not just ignore it. So.
But the one part of that I especially object to is the notion that the Charter Review Committee of citizens shall be appointed by the city councilors.
Oh, right.
So, you know, in other words, we'd like to, we'd like to change our job description. So let's appoint the committee who will make the proposals.
Well, but it wouldn't be an open process, wouldn't it? I don't know.
Whatever an open process.
Okay, all right. Well, let's get to the ballot one because my problem.
Number one is the one that, you know, that I find by far the most problematic. Which is the notion that, and it's being sold as somehow checks and balances, which is nonsensical. But basically right now, the city manager is hired by the city council.
Right.
And then the city manager is the person who accepts the applications that people serve on boards and commissions and chooses them. It is not subject to city council approval. So of course, you know, if anybody thinks that the city manager isn't getting input from city councilors, that they ought to think again because.
But also he's getting input from all the different departments where these committees
He's
come
getting
out
input from all around.
But it doesn't say that in the back. It sounds like the city manager gets these names and then he decides to, and it's not like that.
Right, but the city commissions by design are not political bodies. They were never supposed to be political bodies, and if anybody thinks that having city council veto power over appointments to city boards and commissions
isn't political,
will do anything other than make them into political bodies, then think again. You know, the example I like to point out to people, and again, I could come up with many examples. Really would be that if there were 5 votes out of 9 that wanted to, you know, build dense housing or dense anything in an area that was a historic district. And then the appointments came up for people who serve on a historical commission who might actually be in a position where they might slow down the tearing down of historic buildings and to replace them with high density whatever. I would seriously question whether a person who actually believed in historic preservation would ever make it through the approval process. Because the political people will say, well, that's contrary to, you know, what we've decided is the way things must be. And
but you're assuming that there would be 5, it just would be 5 votes could do that.
That's all it requires is a simple majority.
Well,
to veto any appointment. And the other thing too is, you know, what's the process of approval? So let's say Robert Winters decides he'd like to be on the Central Square Advisory Committee again. So the city manager makes the announcement. Thankfully, I was reappointed relatively recently. But 3 years from now, if I choose to still stay on that, and if I'm reappointed, it then goes to the city council. And because if I happen to say something negative about some city council,
you wouldn't be appointed.
So therefore, I can kiss that opportunity goodbye. And also, but it's not just me. I mean, the thing is that anybody who'd say anything contrary would be in a position where they would then get grilled at some public meeting, you know.
Okay, I know. Let me ask you though, on these commissions, like the planning board, what is the term? Is it 3 years? Is it 3 years for most people? On most commissions and boards?
Typically it's 3 years. There are some boards that have 5-year appointments.
Which are those? Like,
I think maybe the Police Review Advisory Board, maybe a 5-year term.
Really?
Other ones are staggered. So there are 1-year appointments, 2-year appointments, 3-year appointments, a combination of them, depending, you know, so it really does depend on the board's commission.
It seems like the one,
one other thing that was left completely unsaid, and I think it's really important, is that what is a board? What is a commission?
Right. Well, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so for example, if and another good example I give is the city manager appointed a task force on the future of public safety, right? Not so long ago.
Yeah.
Who were supposed to sort of re-envision, alternatives to, policing and whatever, right? So there were appointments made. I'm not going to make any statement about the quality of the appointments.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I was a city councilor, I would have said, okay, Louis, seems like you did a good job. I'm not going to nickel and dime it, challenge any individual people there. But what would be the process then? And that's by the way, that's called a task force, but it is city manager appointment. So so it's a recycling advisory committee.
See, that's not even a commission, that's a committee, recycling advisory committee. So you got
city board,
committees, it's a
right?
board. Okay. There's
Right.
just,
Nowhere in the description of these ballot
know.
questions is there any
Yeah.
definition of what constitutes a city board or commission.
I just, that it's gonna probably get a yes, because everyone, oh, why not?
Well,
makes sense,
honestly,
and it's just
you've got
so,
you've got 8 incumbent councilors going around saying, vote
I
for
know.
this, vote for this.
I
and,
know.
this is democracy. And
Wait,
it isn't.
who was not? Is somebody not saying that?
Tim Toomey was the only person who voted.
Yeah, but he's not running, so it
And
doesn't.
he's not running. So that's what I said. So you got 8 incumbents. So
Oh,
vote for
boy.
this. Give us more authority. Give us more power. And whereas I actually think that one of the great things about city boards and commissions is that they are insulated, independent from the political aspect,
and have more to do with the department that they're associated with, and the city manager basically, I think, just goes by recommendations, but he or she is not going to nitpick every little name. I mean, it seems like it's the planning board and the Board of Zoning Appeal and the Historical Commission are the biggies that I think people are wanting to kind of influence, right?
Yeah, right. But another thing, and I don't know if we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but another aspect of this, which was left completely undefined, was there are commissions. They are at least called commissions, like the license commission,
yeah,
or the election commission.
Oh, right. But those are paid, but they're paid.
Right. So I would argue, again, I'm not the attorney general who didn't do her job, but the election commission was created under the Special Act of the Legislature in 1921. It's not technically part of the planning charter, but the city manager is the appointing authority and has to choose from amongst 3 candidates vetted by the local party committees, and then makes a decision.
That sounds pretty fair to me.
But it is a city commission. So
yeah, but I think that would probably be exempt.
Probably be, but when you're talking about charter matters,
I know people think, oh yeah, that we can have, yeah.
Right.
But
so
you know what?
My concern about this is, amongst others, is that I honestly think we've got some incredibly lazy city councilors who wouldn't even think about dedicating the necessary time and effort to make sure that this was thoughtfully crafted.
They shouldn't even have curb cuts, let alone all this other stuff. But anyway,
right.
But you know what? Also, somebody made a comment. I don't know if it was a counselor or a commenter about these all white people or whatever. And the Recycling Advisory Committee, which I sometimes tune in on, very diverse. I'm sorry, we've got, you name it, we've got it. I mean, I think people are also getting at the socioeconomic level too, and that people aren't participating. Guess what? Even the people that can afford to have time don't want to participate. So go to where the people are then. Have your meetings have them at the places where you don't think people are getting represented.
Yeah,
I don't think you can't just keep putting it on that they don't have the time. They don't have the, they're not able to, I'm sorry.
Well, that's a convenient excuse by those who try and take issues. The real problem.
Oh, therefore we have to pay them. That's the other big issue.
That's another thing, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There's
yeah.
There's a reason why it's often the case that the city manager has to reopen the application process for boards and commissions.
Because it isn't diverse enough, right?
I can tell you.
Yeah.
Because I talked to these folks. That Louis V. Pasquale, Richie Rossi, Bob Healy.
Mm-hmm.
They were always, the biggest challenge was that they didn't have enough good applicants. coming.
Yeah,
you know.
right.
So they were trying to have as a broad and diverse group of appointees as they could, but the fact is that the applicants simply weren't there. And honestly, there are some applicants who were so problematic that they weren't going to get appointed because for good reason. But you know, so sometimes you just have to keep the process open and try and lure them in. Maybe we don't do a particularly good job of selling the value of serving on boards and commissions. I have for years been trying to push it to people. I put it up on my website, and I always sort of saying this is one of the best educations you can get for nothing. You know?
Right, but wait a minute, Robert, there is a difference between like a RAC meeting and a planning board, which involves so much time and
I agree.
You know, homework. And I do think there's certain boards that probably should be paid or stipends, but certainly not across the board. I mean, that's how I feel. And
but you know, even the nature of the planning board has changed considerably over the years.
Yeah,
it used to be called the planning. You know, there was basically the planning department back then. So the planning board, before they renamed them, they rebranded themselves as the community development department. But you know, once upon a time, what they did was they would sort of shepherd processes, their actual planning processes. You know, so you know, there were plans that were coming out of the planning department. They really worried about planning. That what has happened, I don't know, for better or worse over the years, is the city council has chosen to create zoning language for in particular, but not just zoning language, that has within it special permit mechanisms and special permit criteria that basically puts the responsibility then on the planning board to be the one who grants a special permit.
Oh,
right?
I see.
So
that's interesting. Yeah.
So what they've done is they've basically been loading more and more work and responsibility onto planning board members over time.
Well, these zoning petitions, every week there's a zoning petition.
Right. Now, one of the things they did some years ago with the planning board is they added sort of, there's like, what's the term, auxiliary members, associate members of the planning board.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right.
Right. So that instead of having the 7, so there should be 7 voting members, but they have 2 additional members. So, you know, you could spell a person, so somebody can opt out. So maybe they should consider actually modifying the nature of the planning board a little bit, if indeed the workload is too much. But I think for the most part, the people who choose to serve on the planning board do so because they find it challenging and they find it interesting, and they're incredibly, you know, responsible citizens trying to, you know, contribute to their city, you know, and, you know, and honestly, if any one of them said, you know, I just can't do this anymore, it's taking too much time, all they have to do is cry uncle, and that's it, you know, and then, you know, they open up a planning process and appoint somebody else who wants to do it, you know, so you don't have to serve, and you know, and there are some very long serving members of planning board and some of the other city boards and commissions, but that's not a requirement. You know, I like the fact that there is some institutional memory and that there are some long members. I would absolutely oppose any attempt at absolute term limit, but I do think turnover is a good idea. You know, but that kind of can happen naturally, and to some degree does happen naturally. You know, I mean, I was like 22 years on the recycling advisory.
You were longer than I was, like 20. Yeah,
about 20. Okay, so some of us served a long time, but I like to think that we carried a lot of the institutional memory.
I still involved, and I think it's still something I keep up with. But I guess you know, I just want people to know their subject too. I mean, yes, you want more diversity, but you can't just throw someone in there just because they're an activist and want to, you know, like have one point of view, you know.
I can give you example. I won't name the names here, but over the years, where people who were appointed to the planning board came in as involved, active citizens without a whole lot of background in either architecture or urban design or planning, whatever, but they were good quality people who could grow into those positions. So
I don't mean to say they have to be an architect or anything, but just have some interest in followed stuff.
Right. So maybe for those who want to go that route, you know, maybe have a few more associate members. You know, so
I think they do actually. There's someone there.
Well, they have 2.
And someone that's actually been in subsidized housing, I think, so.
Right,
From that
so the thing is,
experience.
maybe have a few more associate members and kind of rotate them in and sort of, and if it's to their liking, they'll stick around and maybe they'll be there for 20 years, or maybe not, So
I think it depends on how many people apply to be on it. If you have all these, maybe you want to make room for some people. I don't know. So it's up to the city manager at this point to reappoint, right?
Right. Well, we don't have that many very long-term members on it right now, but we do have really great people like you,
some
Russ,
other
who are on there. And
honestly,
people like you will provide the necessary institutional memory. Because honestly, staff members of community development department used to provide that, but they had so much turnover that they don't have nearly as much institutional memory anymore. So it's kind of good when a planning board member or two has some of that to offer. So anyway, so I'm I'm just going to straight out urge people to vote against these ballot questions, but I fully expect they will probably prevail.
the ballot, no on all of them? No, I actually,
honestly,
the last two I think are kind of innocuous.
I don't care so much about the last two either way, because as I say, they're really superfluous.
Yeah, but I do think putting it into the structure makes, we better pay attention and it should happen, because you can say, well, we don't need to do that. I don't know.
Right.
I don't care.
I mean, I
don't
don't agree with that regarding the city manager evaluation. I think they could always do that. And if they choose not to, they go, let's not do it this year. We don't need to do it. And then it'll be fine. Why go through a formal process if you really don't feel the need?
Well, they can say that though. They can say, well, do we want to review this, or how much time do we want to spend? Are they doing a good job? I mean, it depends on how.
Let's just check the box. We've now fulfilled the charter obligation. Done. Right.
All right. Well, that's true.
But the last thing I'll say here in the last seconds here is just that the ballot, the charter review process, I'd be okay with that, but I don't think it should just be appointments of the city by the city councilors. That's it.
All right, I agree. All right, so we will be back then
most likely
election night, I think.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Bye. We'll see you.